But yeah, anyways, this episode is actually gonna be my longest episode.
No, it's not, son. Alrighty, hi there, and welcome back everybody to Alan Awake Remastered. Now this episode is actually going to be different from the other ones, because I decided that in this particular episode, I'm going to be reading the manuscript. So yeah, you could consider this to be a filler episode. If you're not into that, go to the next one. I'll continue on with the story. But if you are interested, then enough further delays, let me just get started on the episode.
Shh, baby. The power's out. There's no light. Come back to bed and I'll make you forget all about your fear.
My fear? It's your fear. Why aren't you afraid? You're not Alice. Turn the lights on now. Where's the clicker? What did you do with it?
Alan, honey, you're still 1 foot in a dream. You're not making any sense. Come back to bed.
Yo, is it me or did it get brighter in here since the last time we were here? Anyways, I explained myself in the intro. I guess this is what you call a filler episode because like I'm not really gonna continue on with the story, but I am gonna continue on with the story in book-wise. So yeah, let's just see how that goes. Episode 1, Nightmare. The Page.
Departure by Alan Wake. The man turned to face me. His face was covered in shadows. It was hard to make him out in the darkness of the forest that surrounded us, but the axe he lifted was plain to see. It glistened with the blood of his victim. He grinned madly. The shadows were alive, distorting his features. It was a scene from a nightmare, but I was awake.
He was Alan Wake.
The Taken stood before me. It was impossible to focus on it, as if it stood in a blind spot caused by a brain tumor and eye disease. It was bleeding shadows like ink underwater, like a cloud of blood from a shark bite. I was terrified. I squeezed the flashlight like my life depended on it, willing it to stop coming any closer. Suddenly something gave, and the light seemed to shine brighter.
Yeah, I didn't know what the hell to call those things. Honestly, I was just calling them shadow people. I didn't know what they were really called until like halfway throughout the episode, like around episode 4 maybe. He just starts the Taken started chasing Barry, and Alan screams out, "Barry, watch out, it's the Taken." And I'm like, "Really? That's what he calls them." I'm like, "Oh shit, dude, I just been calling them fucking shadow people." But all right, Taken sounds whatever, but shadow people sounds better. Just saying.
I heard them before I saw them, swooping down from the sky and screeching as they came. I spun around just as the cloud was upon me. For an instant, I stared into 100 dead eyes, black pearls glittering in the darkness. I raised the flashlight and the swarm exploded like fireworks. Feathers burned, turned into ash. I couldn't hear my scream above theirs.
Yeah, so just to let you know as well, I didn't capture all the pages, just some of them, but I'm just going through the ones that I got. Maybe I'll come back to them, do them all maybe. I'm not 100% sure. Most likely not, but we'll just see in the future. If Alan Awake 2 comes out, and if I really do want to complete it all 100%, then maybe I will just come back to it. But until then, I feel like not, no.
The cabin on Cauldron Lake? She asked. The sheriff looked at me suspiciously. The early morning light flooded through the office windows. I would probably never have gotten out of the woods alive without her help, but I couldn't tell her the truth of what I'd faced the previous night. She'd think I was lying or crazy. She'd lock me up, and she wouldn't help me find Alice.
Hell yeah, dude. Just think about it. If you would have just go out to the sheriff and just told her that, listen, this guy, he was just kind of shadowy, and then I shined some light on him, and then all of a sudden he just turned human, but he was still evil, and then I shot him with my shotgun, and then he just died and disappeared. That happened. Can you help me find my wife? She'll lock your ass up and throw you to the loony bin, man. So it was a good call on Alan to not tell her the truth about that.
Rose knew she had been gushing, but right now she didn't care. As far as she was concerned, her brief meeting with Alan Wake was literally the high point of her life. She watched as he got in the car with his wife. She was pretty, confident, at ease with Wake. Not like Rose. They were perfect for each other. She'd have given anything to be called their friend.
So that's a clear example of him saying that he really loves his wife. I could respect that.
Barry Wheeler was bouncing off the walls. He jumped on a plane after his calls were ignored by both Al and Alice for several days. It could mean that they were both on a second honeymoon, but Barry didn't buy it. Al had been way too unstable for that, not sleeping, messed up. Barry had years of experience dealing with Alan Wake, and he couldn't ignore it. Something was wrong.
I like the fact that he calls himself Al, which is kind of weird. I don't know. It's just like, for me, my experience, I just like being called by my first name. I don't like calling myself by nicknames people give me, but I guess to each their own. Okay, so that was the end of episode 1, Nightmare. Now, let's continue on to episode 2.
It's true what they say about the fall and the sudden stop at the end. I'd lain here in the snow while the lurid chain of scenes that had led me here kept playing in my head. A rerun of my own private snuff movie. A memory of my corpse. Alone at my own wake. Thinking in metaphors again. The femme fatale was gone. Only a sour taste remained of the kiss that killed me.
Oh shit, whose voice is that? That's definitely not Alan. If I remember correctly, episode 2 was the page that I got in his apartment. So I'm guessing that's from one of his books, from Alice Casey, The Sudden Stop, if I remember that correctly. And I think that was the actor or whatever. Point is, it's not Alan. But hey, that's very appreciative of the sudden change.
This was a late goodbye. 13 years after I'd gotten my revenge. It had finally caught up with me. It had been a long time to bear the pain. My blood painted the snow red. A gruesome slushy dissolved all the scattered painkillers and leisurely dripped down to the sewer, mingling with the bile of the city, becoming one with it. I can see them now, my wife and my baby. Honey, I'm home.
Holy shit, Alan, you got a fucked up imagination, man. God damn. I'm not gonna lie, that's some really dark shit, but that's some interesting reading right there. Like, my god. No wonder your fucking books are selling like hotcakes, man. Because that is very interesting. That keeps me, like, on my toes, saying, like, holy fuck, is he dead on the snow? Is he bleeding out? Is he now seeing the white light? Is he seeing his wife and his kid? Saying that, honey, I'm home. Basically, a metaphor is saying that, listen, I'm gonna die and leave this earth, and now I'm coming to see you. My god, that's some deep shit there, man. Goddamn.
In spite of its human mask, to describe the dark presence as intelligent would have implied human qualities on something decidedly inhuman. Nonetheless, it found the one spot in the diner that was dark enough. Some light spilled into the corridor, ravaging it. But it took the pain. Horrible as it was, the writer would soon fix that. He would be coming to the one place where it still had power.
What the fuck? So, wait a minute. It's saying it found the one spot in the diner that was dark enough. So, holy shit, that actually makes a lot of sense. Because if I remember correctly, going inside the diner, everything was bright. You know, the Andersons brothers was there, the sheriff was there, the park ranger was there. Well, not the sheriff, the park ranger was there, Rose was there, and then Cynthia Weaver was there. But she was like cowering away from the darkness. So if I remember this correctly, Cynthia Weaver was basically warning me, telling me like, don't go into the darkness, it could be dangerous. Which was basically foreshadowing what was gonna happen. So now that I think about it, like, remember that dark entity that's supposedly Barbara Jagger? Yeah, that was it. And wow, that literally just makes more sense now. Now that clicks. Now I understand why the dark entity got to Alan in the first place and why Stucky was basically in the restroom being mind controlled not to come out. So yeah, that's my thinking of it. What I'm trying to say is Stucky was, you know, stuck in the bathroom. But yeah, he was stuck in the bathroom being mind controlled by the dark entity that was controlling Cynthia Weaver. And then she gave Alan the keys. And yeah, Alan basically said, oh, okay, thank you. Took the keys, got in the car, and then left. And yeah, holy shit, man.
The air in the visitor center was heavy with an awful smell, as if some rotten drowned thing had crawled up from its grave. Rusty kept coughing blood. My eyes were drawn to the twisted shape of his broken leg. The attack had been vicious. Max whined in his cage. Rusty's eyes were wild with fear and terror. He gasped. "Mr. Wake, it happened just the way it was on that page."
Ah, shit. And that's one of the things. I don't even think I got the page that basically shows that Rusty was reading it. I'm not sure because I didn't collect all the pages, so I'm kind of like in the dark here as well. But oh man, poor Max though. Max did not deserve that at all. He was already injured by the fucking the goddamn bear trap that was stuck to his leg and shit, and now he was basically mauled by the Taken. Oh man, what a way to go.
At the last instant, I changed direction and threw myself down. The axe splintered the trunk of a tree. I stumbled into the pool of bright light. My lungs burned. I was too exhausted to move. I tensed as I waited for the killing blow, but it never came. I raised my head. Nothing moved in the darkness beyond. For the moment, bathed in the cold light, I was safe.
So this is when Alan discovered that the light is basically his guardian, his savior, the thing that used to keep the dark entities away from him. Basically, that's when he knew that the light was his safe haven.
In that last instant of consciousness, Rusty thought about Rose. He was older than she was. Rose was barely out of her teens, but she made him feel young and forget what a train wreck his long-dead marriage had been. He still wore the ring. He'd been waiting for her to tell him to take it off. Now she never would.
Ah, damn. Damn, I didn't even know Rusty was married, honestly. But I like this though. It definitely gives more details into the characters because I had no idea Rusty was married or that he was interested in Rose. And hell, I didn't even know that Rusty was a hell of a lot more older than Rose. But I guess he kind of had the feeling that he was waiting for her to say that, oh, you know what? I'm in love with you, Rusty. Let's just be together. But now that's never gonna happen. Damn.
I turned the corner, afraid of what the flashlight's beam might reveal. Suddenly, a roughly painted symbol of a torch glowed in the light. Behind it, hidden by a rock, sat a battered metal trunk. It was here for a reason, packed with supplies, batteries, flares, ammo, things you need to make it through the darkness of the night. Something left behind by someone who knew what I knew, and more.
Oh, okay, so this is when Alan discovers the hidden loot by the light that Cynthia Weaver left behind for him. You know, she didn't know that Alan was the guy who was gonna save him, but she left him there just in case, you know, for when that time comes, which is pretty interesting, by the way. You know, like, cause she basically thought ahead, cause remember, she was doing this back in the 70s, and she was just waiting for that one specific person. Oh, goddamn. I was just thinking about it, you know, just, now thinking about just random people stumbling onto this, just be like, holy shit, look what I found out in these fucking woods and shit. Fucking flare gun, some rifle bullets, and shotgun shells, flares. Like, who the hell would leave these? I don't know, I just think that's kind of funny.
Agent Nightingale didn't want to be in Bright Falls. These little communities revolted him, and he didn't like the trees or the coffee. He now knew that impossible horrors lurked behind the storefronts and smiles. He desperately wanted to turn the car around and just drive until he passed out or ran out of road and booze. But he had a job to do. He had a rider to catch, at any cost.
That fucking asshole Nightingale, man. So he did not like the coffee, nor he does not like the small towns, nor nature. Goddamn asshole. Well, fuck him anyways. He got what he deserved.
On more than one occasion, Alice had tried to explain to me how it felt to be afraid of the dark. To her, darkness wasn't simply the absence of light, but something more tangible than that. It was something you could touch and feel. Worse than that, it was something with a mind of its own, something malicious and malign. For her, things changed when they were wrapped in darkness. They turned into something else, something foreign, and nothing was safe or innocent anymore. I'd never really understood what she meant, until now.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think I will ever understand that type of fear. I guess when I was younger, yeah, I was pretty afraid of the dark, but later on in my teen years, I just spent them in the dark and shit. But I was never that petrified from the dark.
The night had been one desperate situation after another. I was exhausted, and my body felt as though it had been chewed up and spat out. The flashlight was heavy in my hand, and each pull of the trigger sent a painful shock up my arm. But I was finally out of the woods and things were looking up. That's when I heard the chainsaw.
Oh shit, fucking Leatherface was coming for that ass, boy. God damn. Because remember, everybody, Alan has never really fired a gun except inside of a firing range. And I don't think he's much of an active shooter. So, you know, the recoil of the revolver just basically numbs his hand. And I'm pretty sure by the type of revolver that he's carrying, it's gotta be a 357 Magnum. And those motherfuckers, like, you keep shooting them over and over again, eventually your fucking arm is gonna be sore, man. Just to hear that the flashlight is getting heavy, and every time he keeps pulling the trigger, his freaking arm feels like it's give out on him. He just then suddenly hears a chainsaw. Man, if I hear that shit, I would just forget all of that, and I would just be ready like a motherfucker. Bring it on, bitch, I got your ass now. You thought I was weak and done? Nah, motherfucker. I just heard that shit and I'm right back into the game.
When Barry saw the darkness attack the visitor center, it made him a believer. The men Al said he'd shot, they hadn't been just locals on crank. Somehow the world had changed, like the channel had been switched without warning. You think you're watching a sitcom, and you're really watching a horror show. When the birds started attacking the cabin, Barry wasn't surprised, just terrified.
Now, this one is just basically Barry now finally believing Alan, saying like, hey man, listen, I thought you were crazy until I saw this shit happen to me. And I was like, okay, never mind, Al. You're not crazy. You're not crazy. Holy shit. I wish you were crazy, but you're not crazy, man. Now I see what the fuck you mean. So yeah, I had to take the birds attacking the cabin in order for Barry to be like, yeah, I should have listened to my boy Alan. And he wasn't crazy at all.
The FBI agent's command froze me in place. I considered surrender. It was all falling apart anyway. I could give in, let someone else deal with it. But it felt all wrong. Call it instinct, his posture, the way he held the gun. He was no friend. Shots ringing in my ears, I leaped for the hole in the fence and stumbled into the darkness beyond.
Yeah, man, because like the way he was ordering commands at Alan, and then he was just shooting off his gun for no reason. Basically, he just told him like, hey, listen, man, I got you surrounded. You better come out with your hands up, ta ta ta. And I'm like, yo, dude, what the fuck? You didn't even give me a second to at least put my hands up at all. You just started firing. So hearing those shots, Alan panicked. He just found a hole, just ran right into it, and just basically stumbled into the woods. I mean, I couldn't blame him. You know, I would do the same thing as well, man, because that motherfucker was just a loose cannon. So I'm not gonna risk my life for that.
The logging site was a mess. The modular office had been pushed off the cliff. Deputy Thornton climbed up from the wreckage excited, breathing hard from the exertion. Nobody there. It's weird. Don't you think that's weird? Bored, Mulligan let out a mighty snort. Hell, it's always weird, Thornton. Just a question of sorting out what kind of weird it is this time around.
Ah, okay. Now I see that the deputy and the other guy, Morgan? Yeah, Morgan. Now we're seeing what they're seeing. Alan's basically writing their own story. Like for example, right now, like going into details and shit, now we get to see what those guys have been up to. So they were at the logging cabinet. Well, not logging cabinet. They were over at the logging place and just basically saying like, man, it's fucking weird that nobody's here. But the other guy is just basically saying that, man, it's always weird. Just the real question is, what kind of weird it is this time. So yeah, I really do appreciate that. But now we're finally seeing what they're going through.
Shadows stirred and the wind picked up as I ran through the forest. I felt the dark presence turning its gaze toward me. Then the moonlight was blotted out by dark shadows that raced violently across the ground, moving too swiftly to be natural. Darkness gathered between the trees and melted again to reveal the taken. No natural path had brought them here.
Okay, so this is when Alan is discovering that basically in the darkness they could just appear and reappear and disappear just as quickly as they reappeared. So that's when he's wondering, holy shit, how is this possible? Because in the darkness, they basically have the advantage. So Alan had to get to the light as quickly as he could. Otherwise, he was just gonna get consumed by it. Alright, on to episode 3. Ransom. Jesus Christ, I'm not gonna lie, I missed a whole bunch of pages in this one, and yeah, there's gonna be a lot of missing ones over here, so sorry about that.
Mr. Randolph liked Rose. That little smile she had, how she was still sweet when life had tried so hard to make her bitter. It wasn't any of his business what she did in her trailer, but those strangers, the writer and his smart-ass sidekick, looked like trouble, and they'd been in there for hours, way past her normal bedtime. He reached for the phone and called the sheriff's station.
Oh, so he was the one that called the police. Well, I mean, I would understand that too, because, you know, Rose is barely out of her teens, and then, like, here comes these two strangers walking in, guys that are, like, in their 40s and shit, looking for her, and then they've been in her trailer for hours on end. You know, he would actually assume the worst. You know, I mean, it's normal. It's normal. You know, I would react the same way too, honestly. But it's just the fact that he didn't go and check on them first. Or maybe he did. Maybe he did check on them, and then that's why he called the police, which would be understandable. Cause seeing two guys passed out and Rose acting all weird, yeah, I probably would have called the police as well. So in all honesty, I don't blame him.
For decades, the darkness that wore Barbara Jagger's skin slept fitfully in the dark place that was its home and prison. It was hungry and in pain. It dreamed of its nights of glory when the poet's writing had called it from the depths and given it a brief, terrible taste of power and freedom. The rock stars had stirred it from the deep sleep the poet had sunk it back to in the end. When it sensed the writer on the ferry, it opened its eyes.
Okay, so if I would have read this a long time ago, in the beginning of the episode, I would have known that it wasn't Cynthia Weaver that was called. It was actually Barbara Jagger, who was being controlled by the dark entity. So in that case, it was just basically sleeping, waiting for the next writer to come along and to finally set him free.
Nightingale stared through the broken studio window into the dark woods. He turned around, started to walk out, but Maine grabbed his arm. "Young man, you almost shot me. You don't shoot off rounds at people like that. What's the matter with you?" Nightingale shook his arm free, marched out. His cheeks burned with rage and humiliation.
That's right, you tell him, Mr. Maine. You tell him, fucking psychopath with a goddamn gun and badge and shit. Like, literally, he was just shooting at inside the station like a madman. He wasn't even aiming at me. He was just shooting right inside. Like, shit, you could have killed Maine, and that would have been murder. Or at the very least, homicide or manslaughter. Like, he told him again, like, you just don't shoot rounds off like people like that if you're not aiming, which is kind of stupid on his end. And yeah, he should feel embarrassed. Nearly killed an innocent man there. Well, nearly killed two innocent people there, because Alan, he wasn't guilty of anything at all. But yeah, he didn't know that. What the problem was, he just started shooting inside the radio station, and because of him shooting, Alan basically just booked it out of there. So basically, that negligent discharge was on Nightingale's fault.
The pipe wrenched itself loose from the bridge's steel framework. Wrapped in darkness, it floated in midair, twitching. For a moment, I didn't understand what I was looking at. The heavy object lurched at me with impossible force. I threw myself out of the way, but just barely. When I turned my flashlight on it, it shook in a dark rage before it flew at me again.
Okay, so this is now where it's getting to the objects are being thrown at Alan. And Alan is kind of like, what the fuck is going on? So yeah, dude, like, you just imagine you're just walking through the woods and then all of a sudden a big ass barrel just gets lifted up in the air and then just gets chucked right at you. You'll be freaking the fuck out too. Cause I wouldn't blame Alan, cause that's some scary shit right there. So yeah, that's when he was discovering that the dark entity is using objects now to flick at him. Not only people, but just using anything around it just to get rid of Alan. So that's some pretty crazy shit.
I slammed the door shut right in his smug face. He pleaded for me to open the door. True to form, the asshole actually thought I would obey. I had no sympathy left, no guilt either, not for him. I took a moment to savor the scream. I bet I had a smile on my face. It was all that I had time for. The dark presence was inside the lodge with me.
Oh shit, Alan, that's kind of fucked up. I know you didn't like Dr. Hartman because he's talking about Dr. Hartman in this one, but come on, dude, that's kind of fucked up on your end, man. You just basically heard the man die right before you, and you're just like, you know what, fuck him. He was an asshole, so it didn't matter what happened to him. I mean, yeah, you know, he did drug you, and then he tried to gaslight you into believing that your wife was dead. But did he really deserve it though? I mean, I don't know, man. It's just, did he deserve to die? I don't know. I haven't read into much, so maybe in the next episode, I probably will. Next episode, aka Manuscript that I'm about to read right now. So let me just get all the episodes done, and then I'll just tell my opinion about that.
With Nightingale gone and the night wind blowing in through the broken studio window, Maine stared at Sarah. The sheriff looked away. Maine's voice shook with barely controlled anger. That boy's doing more drinking than thinking. I hope you know what you're doing, Sarah. He's got a sickness in his eyes. You take my word for it. He wants Wake for a reason, and it's not for anything good.
Oh shit, Mr. Maine basically just telling Sarah off, just saying like, listen man, that boy ain't right. Like, he's been doing a lot more drinking than thinking, man. Again, you know, he did shoot off inside the freaking radio show, and you know, he shouldn't have done that at all. You know, of course, Maine will be pissed. Who wouldn't be pissed? You know, you just have somebody in your house for a few seconds, all of a sudden the cops show up and they just start shooting inside of your property. Of course, anybody will be pissed. And I'm guessing that's when Sarah had the realization that, oh shit, you know what, Mr. Maine was right. You know, it's just this motherfucker Nightingale, he's batshit crazy. He's gone out of his mind. So good on Maine for telling Sarah about it, but especially good on him for telling Nightingale off.
When Thomas Zane fell for Barbara Jagger, it happened fast. She was young, vibrant, and beautiful, full of life. He had never been a very happy man, and without any seeming effort, she had changed all that. Zane felt good for the first time in his life. Everything she did was another piece of a jigsaw puzzle he hadn't even known he'd been missing. And best of all, she made the words flow, strong and sharp. She was his muse.
Oh, okay, I see. In case you guys remember, when he says that like she was his muse, Alan said the exact same thing about his wife as well when they were watching the TV show that he was on. So that's a little bit of paying attention to detail right there. But yeah, I do like the fact that they're now talking about Thomas Zane, how he met Barbara, but what Barbara meant to him. Because again, it says right there that he really wasn't a very happy man, but whenever he's around her, she just fills him with life. You know, she made the words flow strong and sharp. Oh, but what terrible fate lies for the two of them. Young love dies hard, I guess.
Some of the Taken retained echoes of their former selves, but these were just the nerve twitches of a dead thing. Nothing remained but a shell covered and filled with darkness. In most cases, these puppets were enough for the purposes of the dark presence. But for anything more elaborate, as with the writer, it was different. It needed his mind. And so rather than taking him over completely, it merely touched him.
So wait a minute. So what I'm gathering right now is just basically whoever's in the darkness, who doesn't have any light on them, when the actual darkness comes, they take over their body? Is that what I'm getting at? I don't know. It's just maybe I'm missing something here. Because it's saying like whenever the darkness takes control of somebody, it just needs like their mind to control them like a puppet. And it doesn't take that much neither. It just like slightly touches them and there you go. They're basically under their control. That's terrifying. that's just basically terrifying, man. Because in case you haven't noticed, they're basically in the woods where there's hardly any light besides the actual fucking sun. You know, if they were in the city, you know, that's a whole completely different story, you know, because cars be passing by, street lamps, you know, businesses and all that other jazz. But since they're in a small town wooded area, there's not that much light out there, so anytime they would stumble into the darkness, they would basically get taken over by the Taken. So yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
I stared through the bars of the jail cell. Barry stood behind me, swaying on his feet, looking as ill as I felt. Agent Nightingale stood on the other side of the bars with Sheriff Breaker. Nightingale had a stack of manuscript pages in his hand. He seemed unhinged as he gloated. Well, I've got you now, Raymond Chandler. It's all here. All the evidence, including conspiracy to murder a federal agent.
Oh shit, now this was just the very beginning of episode 5. The clicker, if I remember correctly. Wow, so basically this whole manuscript is just a foreshadowing of what was gonna happen in episode 5. Because again, it's saying that it was him and Barry, they were just basically in jail. And Barry was feeling like crap because they were drinking the night before, trying to find the records that the Anderson brothers left, try to locate the Lady of the Light, which happened to be Cynthia Weaver. Ah, I see. So basically all these manuscripts is just like mix match all over the place, but they all come connected in future events.
Things were never as simple in real life as in fiction. I had lost count of the times I had wished there'd be a clear reason for my writer's block. Something to fight, something to lash out on. There wasn't. I was filled with doubt. I was nothing like the hero in my books. Alex Casey had gone through his life with single-minded determination, never wavering from his goal. Even now, I was angry at myself, angry at Alice, angry at Barry. I was fumbling and I had no plan.
Ah, okay. So this is basically just telling us that what was going through Alan's mind. You know, he was just wanting to take his rage out on something, you know, because he has writer's block, but there was nothing that he could have taken his rage out on because it was all him. It was all basically in his head. You know, he wanted to be like Alex Casey, the character that he was writing in his book, but he couldn't because he was just suffering from writer's block and he didn't know where to take it out on. You know, he was just angry at Alice, he was just angry at Barry, and he was just angry at himself because he was just stuck and he basically couldn't do anything about it. So yeah, just frustrated, confused, and honestly has no idea why. And to me, that's just frustrating, and that just has you feeling empty because you don't know what to do, what to say, or what to think, because at the end of the day, it's all you. You can't be mad at your wife, you can't be mad at your best friend. The only thing you could be mad at is yourself in your own mental place, because at the end of the day, it's you stopping you.
Even behind the closed doors and curtains of his grimy room at the Majestic, the local motel, Nightingale could feel the locals' eyes on him, the unrelenting pressure of their judgment. He forced it out of his mind. For all he knew, they could all be under Wake's spell already. You do what you have to do to get the job done. He took comfort from the bottle in his hand. Please, he thought, just let me get through this.
So wait a minute. If I'm gathering this correctly, Nightingale thinks that everybody's on Alan's side, and because the pressure of everybody else and the fact that, you know, he hated the area that he was at, the only thing that basically got him through him was drinking. So not only was he feeling pressure from other people's and maybe from his superior as well, he was also letting like the liquor talk to him as well. And we all know that drunk thoughts and an angry mind does not mix. So look where that got him.
Maud had checked all of Stucky's rental cabins. There had been no sign of the Wakes. It was dark when he'd found their car parked at the end of the road by Cauldron Lake. It made no sense. They must have taken a wrong turn, but there was no sign of them, and the car had been there for hours already. Frustrated, Mott stood on the rotten ruin of the footbridge that had once led to Diver's Isle before it sank beneath the waves years ago. The boss wouldn't be happy.
Wait a minute, Maud. Wait, who the fuck is Maud? Boss wouldn't be happy. Oh, wait a minute. That was his name? That was the kidnapper's name? Maud? That was the name. Really? Holy shit. I would have never known. I literally just been calling him the kidnapper because I don't think they ever introduced his name at all. They literally just called him the kidnapper. Well, I've never thought what was his actual name. I literally just been calling him the kidnapper all this time. But just to come to think that his actual name is Maud is kind of funny. I don't know why. I just thought it would be like something more masculine. No offense to anybody who was named Maud. I'm sorry. but that last sentence that's saying the boss wouldn't be happy, that kind of made me have a flashback to what the kidnapper Maud said to the dark entity that was controlling Barbara Jagger, saying that, no, we don't have his wife. We just told him that we have his wife just so he could play ball. The boss didn't know what he was doing, or the boss didn't know who he was messing with. And then when I read that last sentence, or when Alan read that last sentence, that kind of had me a little jog memory, saying that, holy shit, so that was the kidnapper. The kidnapper was Maud. Huh. That's fucking wild.
I tried to hold on to Alice, but her form melted away. I was losing control. Dr. Hartman stood in her place. I wanted to hit him, but my arms were jelly. He smiled. It was a reassuring smile, and I hated him for it. I had to give you a sedative. Don't fight it. You went through another rough period. Right now it's very important that you stay calm. We don't want you to have another episode. You're a patient at my clinic. Have been for a while now.
Oh, okay, so this is basically a recap of what happened in episode 4. So I don't think we need to get into it in this one, but basically that's just Alan saying that the recap in episode 4. So he just basically told it. So I don't think I need to get into details about that.
The hunters were big, thick-set men, confident and at home in the woods. They were feeling good, running on beer, ghost stories, and camaraderie late into the night. It did them no good, as they were taken by the dark presence, sucked deep into a darkness far worse than any ghost story they ever told or heard.
Oh, okay. So the big lumberjack guys are basically called the hunters. The ones that literally take freaking 6 revolver shots to the face before they fucking die. Or like 3 shotgun blasts to the fucking face before they disappear. But I guess since they were running on beer and ghost stories late at night, the darkness, or aka the Taken, basically saw their opportunity and just, well, took them. And so yeah, so those were the big guys' enemies named the hunters. Okay, alrighty. Okay, episode 4, The Truth.
Zane could feel the poems, taking form, shaping things. As he experimented, he imagined he could almost feel the power surging through the keys of the typewriter. It exhilarated him. But there was fear, too. If not for his young assistant Emil, he would have given it up. But Emil convinced him otherwise. He, too, had a way with words.
Okay, so who is this Emil person? I think this Emil was introduced into the manuscript as well, but I believe that's one of the pages that I haven't gotten to. But I seen that Zane was kind of hesitant on typing more, but this Emil person convinced him otherwise, to tell him like, hey man, you know, I know it's kind of scary, but it's exhilarating, you know, we should just keep on going. But you know, I guess that's what pushed Zane to keep on going with his typing, and we're gonna see more on to how they got what they got.
Hartman kept talking, giving Barry the grand tour, clearly proud of the place. He went on and on about his hunting trophies, and Barry was impressed. But he was here on business. He raised his voice, cut through the monologue. Hey, Hartman, where's Al? Hartman stopped in mid-sentence, annoyed at the interruption. He nodded at the hulking orderly standing nearby. The man smiled and clapped a practiced hand on Barry's shoulder.
Oh, okay. So this is where Barry came into the cabinet and trying to find Alan. And then, you know, fucking Hartman, he was just trying to stall him for a little bit while, I don't know what, until maybe at night or something. You know, because like clearly he was just trying to stall time for something, but I'm not sure if he was working with the darkness or it was just for one of his colleagues to come over or something. I'm not too sure about the situation, but I know for a fact that Hartman was just stalling Barry because he was just giving him the grand tour of the place, just introducing him to his hunting trophies. But Barry's like, nah, cut the bullshit, I'm here for Alan. Now where is he? And then he's like, all right, you know, since you're gonna be like that, then I guess I'll take you to him, quote unquote. He's gonna be taking him to him, which in reality he wasn't gonna do that at all. He was just gonna have his goons grab Barry and stuff him inside like a freaking room until basically nightfall, really, or until maybe Alan starts writing again and completes the manuscript. I'm not sure where he was going with that, but we'll just see.
Hartman followed the fall of Alan Wake with his binoculars. When the rider hit the water, he ordered Jack to take the boat to him. The spot was easy to see in the dark, even with all the extra lights in the boat. The flare floated and kept burning even in the water. Jack turned the radio louder as the engine sputtered. The music was rough and clanking, something the Anderson brothers would no doubt have enjoyed. But Hartman chose to ignore it. Wake was finally within his reach.
What the fuck? So fucking Hartman was watching all that ordeal go down with me and what was the other dude's name? Matt? Mort? Something. Something like that. Some goofy name. Some goofy ass name. But yeah, he was just watching that whole ordeal go down with us fighting the Taken and shit. And then, you know, as soon as I get taken by the darkness, you know, I open up a flare and then the darkness lets me go. I go plummeting down all the way to the fucking lake. And then he was just basically watching all that go down, man. Cause this is my thing though. Like, all right, what if fucking Alan would have just hit his head, fucking die on his way there? What would have been the deal then? What would have been then? That would have been a complete giant disaster. But it turns out the odds were in his favor. But yeah, I'm guessing that was just basically Hartman's plan all along. It's just to get Alan into his cabinet, trying to have him write the manuscript, trying to get it to complete it, and for whatever reason, not sure yet, but we'll just see right now.
Hartman knew he was no creator. He had no ambitions on that front. And he certainly didn't want to end up like every artist he had worked with here, damaged in ways that were hard to describe, or worse. It was enough for Hartman to maintain creative control and provide direction, to be a producer. That was what most of these people were in need of anyway. Of course, suitable subjects were few and far in between.
Ah, I see. It was Hartman that was really jealous of Alan's creativity. So what he planned on doing is that he tried to capture Alan using his own creativity for his own advantage. So like Alan said, I guess everybody just needed a producer, and even Hartman for himself, he needed one as well. But there were some people that are just like nearly close by that almost get the situation, and then there are just others that are way too far off gone. And I think in that situation, Hartman was just way too far off gone, so he needed some extra help, which happened to be Alan. Yeah, I'm guessing that was the whole ordeal.
I stared at the Viking paraphernalia that littered the area surrounding an unlikely centerpiece. A full-size stage complete with an impressive sound system with all the trimmings, including a dragon. It took a special kind of crazy to build something like this in a remote field. When the sky split open with a deafening boom and the music started blasting, it felt strangely appropriate.
Ah, yes, the cornfield concert. Now that was fucking fun. I swear, man, that shit was just hella fun. I was just having the time of my life with that too. I was just shooting all the Taken. When Barry was playing DJ in the background, I was just shooting all the Taken while Barry was playing DJ in the background, playing with the strobe lights and shit. Well, he wasn't really playing with the strobe lights. He was just trying to get them all to turn on as quickly as possible. But every time he kept doing that, they all of a sudden malfunction on them. But it was alright though. It was alright. I had it all under control. You know, I had the big ass flashlight, and also I had some flares, and also I had that dodging skills going on, so there's that too. But in overall, that Viking concert shit was really fun. Definitely a fun part of the game.
For the moment, Barry was just glad he had survived the fall. He had been separated from Al, and there was no easy way to climb back up. He told himself he'd be okay in the gloomy forest at night. He would just have to wait for a while for Al to find his way down. Barry turned when he heard the heavy footsteps and saw the movement. The man-shaped shadow lunged at him from the bushes, an axe held high. Barry screamed and threw up his hand. The world exploded.
Ah, okay, that was like right after the scene where Alan and Barry, they just crashed, and Barry was just in the forest, you know, looking for Alan and shit, and then all of a sudden a Taken came out of nowhere, but he had his flare gun on him, so he just basically shot him. And because of that adrenaline rush, Barry felt like he was fucking John Rambo and shit, going on a quote unquote killing spree, you know, taking out every shadow people that he came across. I still don't like that, you know, taking shadow people. Yeah, I don't know, I feel like shadow people's better. But anyways, other than that, but yeah, that was actually the scene after they had that crash. Barry was fighting the Taken, he ran into the Andersons farm, and then Alan, he had to go find his way into the Andersons farm. But yeah, that was a little recap.
Mott knew that Wake was smarter than him. Wake had more money, a beautiful wife, everything. And Hartman said Wake was important. That made him better than Mott. But Mott was calling the shots now. He'd expected Wake to whimper and grovel, but instead, he seemed willing to fight. Mott knew he'd gotten under Wake's skin. If only Mott actually had his wife. The thought made him shiver.
Ah, okay, that is his name, Mott. There we go, Mott. I always thought it was Mort. Like Mort from Madagascar. I just thought that was his name, but nah, it's Mott. M-O-T-T. That's kind of a weird name. Like honestly, I never met anybody named Mott, but hey, whoever's named Mott, you got a funny name. But no disrespect, no disrespect. But yeah, anyways, yeah, it's basically saying that Mott was just basically under the thumb of Hartman, just working for him. But he was just kind of expecting for Alan to whimper and to follow every order that he gave because he had his wife. Well, quote unquote, had his wife, but in reality he didn't. And then Mott basically underestimated Alan, thinking that he was gonna do anything that he was saying, but nah, Alan's a hell of a different type of guy. He wasn't gonna get controlled that easily. So yeah, Mott bit off more than he could chew.
Hartman hurried down the corridor. He had disliked leaving Wake when he was surely at his most susceptible to therapy. But this was not an ordinary storm. Wake had been writing, and he had woken something up in the depths of the lake. Now, it was coming for him. Hartman had naturally prepared for a situation like this. The idiot brothers would keep Wake distracted while Hartman double-checked everything, just to be sure.
Oh, okay. So Hartman always knew about the darkness. Because at the beginning, I always thought that he was working with the darkness, but he kind of figured out that nah, they weren't working together. He was working with the darkness, but they weren't basically together. So when he knew that a night like that was eventually gonna happen, he basically had everything prepared for it. And I guess that's why he had the Anderson brothers stick around, because he knew that they were just gonna keep him distracted and everything. But I kind of guessed that backfired because instead of distracting Alan, they actually gave him a bit of information that he needed to actually find the Lady of the Light. So yeah, they basically gave him a clue to the puzzle. So sucks on Hartman's end.
Hartman watched as Wake's features slackened. The man was bullheaded, no doubt. Even lying on the bed, he'd almost broken Hartman's nose the second time. But with a little time, he could break Wake down, give him proper direction. Wake was easily the most promising subject he had had. Well, since Tom, really. Sleep well, Alan, Hartman whispered with a smile. Let me take care of you. He sniffed hard to clear his throbbing nose, swallowed blood, and barely tasted it.
Oh shit, so Hartman basically had Tom too. What? That's fucking crazy. I did not know that. So I'm guessing Tom was quote unquote patient for Hartman as well in his younger days. Well, Hartman does look like an older gentleman, look like around his 60s or maybe very early 70s, like just barely turned 70 or 71, something like that. He doesn't look that old because in case you guys remember, Tom was basically around the 1970s and Alan at this time period, I guess he was around 2010s, somewhere right there, basically about 40 years now. So yeah, that's a huge jumping gap with decades of generation. So yeah, that's why I'm kind of assuming that Hartman's a little bit much more older, quote unquote, a little bit much more older. Dude's probably like fucking 70 years old. Well, yeah, that's what I'm getting right now, is that if Tom was one of the subjects for Hartman and his experiments, which I still don't know what it is, but maybe he kind of had a plan for this in the very beginning, which is a very long awaited plan in my opinion. But if that's the case, I could say this about Mr. Hartman: he's one very patient man.
Agent Nightingale stared at the passed out rider. The man was sleeping off one hell of a night. Nightingale felt a stab of envy at Wake's oblivion, but he had a job to do. He put the gun to Wake's head and almost became a murderer. His hand shook and his throat felt tight and dry. Biting his teeth, he tried again to pull the trigger. He lost the nerve. Wake stirred. Nightingale would have to settle for an arrest.
Oh, okay, so this is when Alan awakened from the nightmare that he had, and then he was basically just staring down the barrel of the gun from Nightingale, and Nightingale was actually having thoughts about killing him right then and there, but I guess he kind of just lost his nerve, which it says right there, and just said like, you know what, nah, fuck that. Just I'm just gonna settle for the arrest because I ain't no killer. I'm just a pussy bitch.
The dark presence followed the choreography laid out to it in the manuscript, growing stronger and stronger, moving like a storm from one scene of destruction to the next. But it was still bound to follow the story and chained to the dark place it came from. When the story reached the end it longed for, it would finally be free.
Oh, like it says there, every time the story continues, it gets stronger and stronger. But once it reaches to the very end, that's when it does finally become free. So the question is, how is Alan going to be able to write a happy ending to something of this nature?
Again, Alice's screams rang in the stillness of the night. I saw myself run toward the cabin, flashlight in my hand. I followed my past self. I was an out-of-body observer, a time traveler in a crazy drunken dream. This was the beginning. The night Alice had disappeared. The mystery of what had happened during the missing week was about to reveal itself.
Okay, so this is the scene where Alan is basically seeing himself in a third person view, basically like a specter. And as everything was going down, he heard his wife scream. He ran back inside. He saw that everything was turned off. He then ran to the back porch. He basically saw her body floating, and then he just jumped right in after her. But what we didn't see until that very part was after the fact was that he came up from the surface, got out of the water, and was just basically telling himself, saying that, oh my gosh, she's gone, she's gone. But then the spirit of Barbara Jagger was just basically convincing Alan that, hey, she's not dead, she's just inside the cabinet. You need to go to her, make sure to see she's all right. You guys will just laugh it off later on. And so Alan does. But then when he reaches there, she just basically tells him, haha, you fool, that was just all a lie, it's all a ruse. She is dead, and she is dead because of your fault. But then Barbara just basically tells him that, but don't worry, you can bring her back. All you have to do is just write and keep writing and keep writing until you bring her back. But we all know is that wasn't her true intention. Okay, we are now moving to episode 5, The Clicker.
Nightingale tried to make sense of the manuscript. It was disjointed and strange. He didn't understand half of it, but it all rang true. Impossibly true. He took out his hip flask when he reached the page that described how he reached the page that made him take out his hip flask. It wasn't the booze that made his mind reel.
Okay, now that is just a mind fuck right there. Holy shit, because I would kind of question this as well. If I was in Nightingale's position, I would question it, as well. Because imagine you're just reading a story, right? And then all of a sudden it says like, okay, as I turn the page, I'm going to be questioned about. Because imagine you're just reading a page, right? And then you're just leaning on the chair. And then you just read on the next sentence that says, as I lean on the chair, I get surprised by the next words I see. And then obviously you get surprised by the next words you see. Like, holy shit, how did it know I just leaned on the chair? So yeah, at this moment right now, he was just wondering, is this really the booze or is this really happening? And my god, man, I don't know what kind of fucking shit you've been drinking that makes you see things like that, but if that's real, I really fucking need some. Bring some over here, man.
Nightingale felt the situation veering out of his control, but the gun at least felt steady in his hands. He was ready to fire, resolved that he would let this happen over his dead body. And yet he hesitated. He had seen this moment before, read it in the page. He was transfixed by the deja vu and the horror that he was a character in a story someone had written. Then the monstrous presence burst in behind him and dragged him into the night.
I don't think I gotta go into much detail about that one because literally word for word what just happened literally just showed in the game. Especially that part where he says like the only way he's gonna leave is over his dead body. But then he hesitates, he says, wait a minute, I've seen this before. As soon as he was about to read that, the fucking dark vortex just comes out of nowhere, grabs him and just drags him out into the night, and yet hasn't been seen for now. And I don't think we are gonna see him anytime soon. So yeah. That's some pretty scary shit, man. Pretty scary deja vu shit right there.
The darkness that wore Barbara Jagger's face was furious. The story in the manuscript had been making it stronger all the time, but now the light had set the writer free and hurt it, weakened it. It was only a matter of days before the dark presence would be strong again, but meanwhile, it would be difficult to recapture the writer.
So I'm guessing that this is after Thomas Zane basically set Alan free from Barbara's grip, and she was pretty pissed about that too, because now that she's weakened because she doesn't have Alan under her control anymore. But yeah, she could still regain that strength with or without Alan, but it was more preferred to her advantage that she had Alan under her thumb.
Cynthia Weaver worked hard, following her obsessive rituals, sometimes fighting them, always giving in to them in the end. She haunted the halls of Bright Falls abandoned power plant. She marked her caches with light-sensitive paint that could only be seen by eyes that had been touched by darkness and saved by light like she'd been. She was preparing defenses and supply lines for the war she knew would come. The war between the forces of light and darkness.
Okay, so it's definitely been confirmed that Cynthia Weaver was the one that left all that equipment for the next person to come along into the journey. I'm guessing first it was Tom, and then the next person who was gonna finish the story was Alan, and then she was basically leaving the supplies for him. But my god, man, you gotta imagine how expensive that fucking light bill must be. And then the town folks just stop and question, like, why the fuck is the light bill so expensively high? It was just so ridiculously high. Like, what the fuck? How are we spending this much on light? I don't know. I just thought that was kind of funny just to look at it in that point of view. But yeah, Cynthia Weaver was the one to leave all that equipment out for the next writer, aka the next person who was gonna complete the story, which was Alan.
For it to be free, the Dark Presence needed the writer to finish the story. Again and again, the story let it get frustratingly close to the writer without letting it capture him. It was bound by the events depicted in the manuscript, but it could pursue the writer indirectly, put others on the task, and stop those who would help him. It took over everything in its path, made them its puppets, and sent them after Alan Wake.
Damn, so it just noticed that the darkness was very afraid of Alan. So scared that basically it was just controlling anything and everything on his path to just basically get him to stop, because they knew that Alan could be the one that could destroy him.
Alice had screamed until she had no voice left to scream. Around her, the darkness was alive. It was cold and wet and malevolent and without end. She was a prisoner, trapped in the dark place. The terror would have burned her mind out, but one thing made her hang on. She could sense Alan in the dark. She could hear him. She could see the words he was writing as flickering shadows. He sensed her too. He was trying to work his way to her.
Oh damn, that has to be a fucking nightmare for Alice, man, because again, she had the fear of darkness, but the only thing that was keeping her sane from not going completely batshit crazy was that she knew that Alan was there by her side. She couldn't see him, but she could just basically sense him, hear him, and just wishing to be with him again. So that was like the only thing that was hanging on. In other words, love conquers all. That's all. Love conquers all, everybody. There you go.
Barry was in his element, making calls, making things happen, even if he didn't entirely know what those things were. He wouldn't let the hot sheriff chick down. Even if every noise he heard from outside, and he heard plenty, made him jump. He had only paused to text Al a message, told him to hurry up. Suddenly, Barry froze in mid-dial. A window broke somewhere in the building, and then the lights went out.
Oh, okay, so that's why Barry was out of the fucking building just screaming and running like a fucking madman and shit. And I'm just over here thinking like, Barry, what the fuck, man? You could have just stayed at the police station where it was just safe with lights. But now that I get this detail, I could see that why he ran out in the first place, because probably something just smashed through the windows and something probably knocked down the power line, causing the light to go out. And then when there's no lights, that's when the darkness has free range. So yeah. But good on Barry though for staying on his element. Either way, that could be scary as shit. Not could be, that is scary as shit, knowing that any second now anything can happen. But yeah, he just stuck to what he was supposed to do, giving people calls, letting everybody know what's happening outside. But yeah, definitely proud of my boy Barry. Good job, Barry.
The story I had written in the cabin had come true. Touched by the dark presence, I had written a horror story, but the end was still missing. The story was incomplete, and the last unfinished page of the manuscript still sat in the typewriter in the cabin study. If I could get back there, if I could read the page, then I could write my own ending to this story and save Alice.
So I'm guessing this was the page that he got when he was in the bunker with Cynthia Weaver and the sheriff and Barry. But I'm guessing that he couldn't write anywhere he wanted to. He has to do it inside the cabinet because that was the typewriter that he started. And I'm guessing that's the typewriter that he wants to end it on, because maybe somehow he'll get on his element there as well. I don't know, man, because honestly, I would have just said, fuck that. I'm just getting the typewriter here and just writing the ending right here and shit. But I'm guessing he had to go back to the cabinet and finish it over there.
Sarah was almost starting to relax. Maybe they could turn this into a win yet. Suddenly, there was a piercing sound, like a table saw gone wild, as 100 birds made out of shadows swarmed into the rotor. The chopper bucked wildly and the board lit up, telling her what she already knew. They were going down. Barry Wheeler screamed next to her.
Okay, that was the part where Alan was in the sewers with Cynthia, and they were just basically going to the other underground bunker, and that's when Alan was giving them the call saying like, hey man, we're heading over there, and they're like, oh okay man, we'll just see you over there. And then all of a sudden he just says like, oh my god, no, Jesus, apt. And then that's when it cuts off, and Alan's all like, oh shit, Barry, can you hear me? I gotta go find him. And Cynthia's all like, nah, he's probably dead. Fuck him. Don't be a selfish idiot. And I'm thinking right there, I'm like, how the hell is he a selfish idiot? He is trying to see if his friend is okay. Cynthia, what the fuck, man? That's why I'm like, bro, he's just trying to see if his friends are okay after that fucking incident that happened. I mean, of course, anybody will be worried. If anything, that's like the exact opposite of selfish, because he's not looking out for himself, he's looking out for them. But yeah, this is kind of like the the Arkham part that where Alan was turning into a much more better person, because in the very beginning he was an asshole. He really was. He was just an asshole. He didn't want nothing to do with nobody. He didn't want to interview with Maine. He didn't want to have too much talking time with Rose. He was just simply there wanting to have his peace and quiet. But later on throughout the game, he became more of a caring person towards everybody, and that's pretty awesome to see.
Thomas Zane knew he had to remove all that had made this horror possible, including himself. That was the only way to banish the dark presence he had unleashed and now looked at him through the eyes of his dead love. But he also knew that despite his best efforts, it might someday return. So even as he wrote himself and his work out of existence, he added a loophole as insurance, an exception to the rule. Anything of his stored in a shoebox would remain.
Oh, okay. So originally Thomas wrote himself in, but he knew that he couldn't do it, so he had to wait until somebody else saves it. You know, kind of an asshole thing for Tom to do. Honestly, he just made a mess for somebody else to clean up. But yeah, he couldn't do it, so he just left whatever that's worth leaving inside the shoebox. But everything else he just scrapped out. But damn though, what a tragic end for Mr. Thomas Zane. Tragic.
Making her way through the water pipe alone, Cynthia was angry at the writer. Foolish young man, taking unnecessary risks. And the way he broke the rules. Didn't he understand what was at stake? Since the terrible days in the 70s, she hadn't wavered once, as hard as it had been. She was tired of protecting the town all these long years, and now only wanted to rest.
Well, damn, bitch. You basically had like 30-40 years on him. Alan had basically like a week's worth of knowledge to this. And you're just mad at him for not knowing the rules? Like, bro, he's been in a fucking coma for about a week. And then he technically has been awake for about, well, maybe a couple of days, couple of nights. You know, it's kind of like saying like, oh, you should have known this on the first night it happened. Like, dude, what the fuck? Like, for real, that's some weird shit right there. But yeah, I do understand where she's getting at. Like, she's been doing this since the 70s, and you know, she is getting older and she is starting to get more tired. And you know, like it says in the paragraph right there, she's just tired of protecting the town all the time, and all she really wants to do now is just rest. Finally get it over with. So yeah, in a way I do understand her, but then again, she's kind of an asshole about it, so. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, and this is gonna be episode 6, The Departure. I don't think I got many manuscripts in this one, and as you can clearly see right now, I'm still halfway throughout the episode. But yeah, I do like the idea that it gives more into detail in the writing form instead of in the visual form, because it does portray like in the book, like you're actually reading a book. And you know how the old saying is like when people read fucking Harry Potter, there you go, Harry Potter. When that one scene where Dumbledore goes up to Harry and just basically tells him like, Harry, did you put your name in the cup, man? Was that you? In the book he says it all whisperly, like, but in the movie he just basically goes up to him and tells him, Harry, was that you? Did you put your name in the cup? Was that you? Did you put the name in the cup? Like, oh my god, what the fuck? That was a very big change right there, sir. Oh yeah, just giving more details into what happened in the world, what happened with the others, and changing a little bit of knickknacks here and there. It's a new experience, a refreshing experience, and honestly, I really do like that. Either way, I know I'm not really the best at wording things at all. I try to get it, you know, I try to add my own 2 cents into the matter. If anybody wants to hear that, I'm pretty sure you want to hear that since you're seeing the video. If not, I don't know what the fuck you're doing in this video, honestly, man. But yeah, anyways, yeah, I guess this is the last episode 6, Departure. Let's just see how many there is, and I'll tell you about my thoughts about the manuscript.
The dark presence was no longer trying to capture the writer so he could create the ending it wanted. The writer knew too much. He was too strong, and he carried a weapon left behind by Thomas Zane, something that could hurt it. Now, the darkness was doing everything in its power to simply stop the writer from ever reaching Cauldron Lake and the dark place it came from.
Okay, so in the very beginning, it was just basically trying to recapture Alan. But now, since Alan got the clicker and he knew what Thomas was writing, he just basically said like, nah homie, you know too much, you gotta go, I gotta get rid of your ass one way or another, you just gotta go, man, you just gotta go. So yeah, I'm guessing that's why the darkness has been trying extra hard in this last episode. And even right now, he's just fucking with Alan's mind, basically saying like they're back in New York, but in reality they're not. So yeah, the darkness is getting extra desperate there.
The bottom of Cauldron Lake was a graveyard of things the lake had claimed in one way or another over the decades. The dark presence brought them up in its wake, scattering the rotten waterlogged hull of an old boat here, the remains of a long ago crashed airplane there, trees shattered under the impacts. The earth groaned. It didn't even notice.
So at the lakeside, it just basically said that everything that was there inside, from like boats to airplanes being crashed to trees falling, everything that was just basically around there was just getting lifted up in the air and swirled around, like at the very end, trying to stop Alan from reaching the darkness to truly hurt it from the inside with the clicker.
Zane cut its heart out, but it didn't die. The thing that wore Barbara's face kept crooning sweet nothings sugar-laced with poison. He put on the suit, untied the monster from the chair. The thing in his arms thrashed weakly, but he held fast. He stepped outside, off the pier, and into the dark water, a sinking pinprick of light descending toward a bottom that never came.
Oh damn, that's some graphic ass shit right there. My god. I could literally just visualize that right now. Zane just cutting out Barbara's heart, and she's just basically laying there on the chair motionless, and he just basically gets up, walks out to the edge, and just plummets into the ocean. But that must be insane what Zane went through.
The place I found myself in was unlike anything I could ever have imagined. It wasn't solid. It flowed. It was conceptual and subjective. For someone else, an artist in another field, it would have been very different. I could sense the story of the manuscript all around me, the words and ideas floating in the air, poised to become real.
So what I'm getting at is that this was a transition into going into that world, where Alan actually dove into the lake with the clicker trying to get Alice and, you know, basically destroy that world which the darkness harnessed. So that's what I'm kind of visualizing right now when Alan said that he found himself in a dark place, meaning that he found himself in the transition state between the real world and that world, floating in the darkness, while all around him he feels some parts of the manuscript being alongside with him as well. Or at least that's what I'm getting at, honestly.
Zane had gone. I stood alone in the shifting dream that was the dark place. I had to find a way to the cabin. I'd written myself a way through this place in the manuscript. I followed the idea of a path. I'd written myself across the ocean that blocked my way, and with that, there was a bridge to the island beyond. The idea of the cabin flickered in the underwater darkness. I willed the cabin to be real, and it was.
Okay, now this is actually some pretty crazy shit now. Because basically Alan's saying that whatever he writes comes true. Like for example, right now he has written himself into the story. He has written himself a bridge to go across it to get to the island, which leads to the cabin, which is kind of a weird concept because he dove inside the lake. And I'm guessing that was like another universe type of parallel dimension. It's a pretty freaky shit, but I like it though. I like it. It's really weird and mysterious, and it's like, wow, what the fuck? So the lake is like magically cursed or some shit like that. But it does bring this question up though. If the place is so haunted, now keep in mind I don't have all the manuscripts, so I'm not 100% sure about this. But if the place is so haunted, how come only Cynthia Weaver knows about it and not everybody else in the town? Sure, they kind of poke fun at it, saying that, oh, you know, Bright Falls is the original Night Springs. You know, this is where Night Springs gets their material. But now come to think of it, there has to be like somebody else that's a writer as well. Well, now that I kind of think about that, maybe the Dark Entity needed like a really strong writer. You know, for example, like instead of some mediocre amateur writer that's barely started off. For example, Stephen King just comes across this place. My god, that would be very fucked up. The fucking whole place would be very fucked up if Stephen King came across that. But yeah, that's kind of my thinking of it. But if that was the case, how come it didn't just do that instead? That's what I'm kind of thinking of it. It just needed Alan because I guess he had like some kind of gift with him, and only he and him alone. But like I said, I'm not too sure about it, but we're just gonna have to see in the rest of the episode. So there you go, guys. That's all the manuscripts. Again, I'm not a professional when it comes to these type of things. Literally, I just wanted to try this out just to see how it does. And I guess you could actually call this a filler episode because it was literally just me talking about the manuscripts. Nothing much going on. That's pretty much it. And that's just basically me giving my 2 cents about the whole story. But will I ever do something like this again in the future? Maybe, perhaps. But only time will tell. Anyways, guys, that's the end of the episode. If you like my content, please go check out my other stuff. But like always, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you when I see you.